Now, if you're a Kimberly Guilfoyle fan, this could be good or bad news, depending on which way you look at it. But Don Jr., it seems like the engagement to Kimberly Guilfoyle is finished. Now, I always would say that if, in fact, Don Jr. did cheat on Kimberly Guilfoyle, and if he was intimate with a woman other than Kimberly Guilfoyle, I always felt like before climax, this is what Don Jr. would say.
The best is yet to come.
Yes, exactly. Kimberly Guilfoyle said it best. Well, Don Jr., at the age of 46, dressed in a blue suit and a white T-shirt, came out of a very expensive restaurant yesterday with a media socialite by the name of Miss Anderson, not Pamela Anderson, and they were holding hands and very snuggly with one another. And from what we've heard, Don Jr. and Kimberly Guilfoyle, they're still engaged. But it looks like that relationship going out the windows. It's a prerequisite if you're Trump to cheat on every woman you've ever been with, whether you're engaged or married or girlfriend, whatever the case may be. I think it's just in the Trump blood, right? You can't treat women with respect. If you're a Trumper, you cannot treat women with respect. You cannot be honorable to a woman, and you cannot be honest with a woman. So looks like Kimberly Guilfoyle might be back on the market. Kimberly, would you agree? I don't know.
The best is yet to come.
Yes, exactly. Well, maybe Gavin Newsom could get back together with her. I don't know. Actually, I doubt that would happen. But Don Jr. Looks like he's moved on from Kimberly Guilfoyle, and he's going to ruin somebody else's life. So we'll see what this woman looks like in a couple of years. But anyway, if it lasts that long, which I seriously doubt it does. James McIntyre was arrested. He's pled not guilty. And there are witnesses that are claiming that there was no physical assault. To the contrary, it was just a simple handshake. So to talk to us a little bit about this and more of Nancy Mace, the disgrace, always a pleasure to be joined by Midas Touch's very own Ron Filipowski, who's been covering this story. Ron, thank you so much for joining us again. How are you?
Yes, I'm the expert on the Nancy Mace handshake scandal.
Ron, it really is crazy.
I got to tell you, I was just, how there's all these fake Trump screenshots that go around. People put them out, and then people believe they're real. And one that's going around right now is about where Trump says Barron is a better guitar player than Bruce Springsteen, and it's totally fake. So, you read the screenshot, and it's like Barron's name is misspelled. So I thought about like replying to the guy and going, it should have been obvious that this is a fake tweet because Trump misspelled Barron's name. But then I thought about it, and I'm like, I don't know that he necessarily knows how to spell Barron's name.
That's true. You're probably right about that. Ron, as if
I don't mean to get sidetracked there, but
no, that's okay. I mean, these are the times that we're living in, Ron. We're going to see this stuff every day. If it didn't get bad enough for Nancy Mace on this whole trans women in bathrooms nonsense and her tweeting 1,000 times about it, it seems like every day it's something new with her.
Yeah.
And I thought something was very strange about this story. Number one, there was no video evidence. Number two, nobody corroborated her story. Nobody said that she was assaulted. Number three, she didn't have any visible marks on her or anything. And she shows up in the chambers yesterday wearing this arm sling. And you've been covering this story. And this guy, James McIntyre, to my understanding, who was arrested, has received awards for his work. Foster care work, and he doesn't have a criminal record. Very strange. And you've been covering this story, Ron. What can you tell us about it?
Well, when a member of Congress goes to speak at an event, and that's what she was doing, she was speaking at this foster care event, they don't go by themselves. They go with staff, security, the whole deal.
Right.
So you would think that one person on her staff or security or whoever would come out and say, yes, I saw this and this is what happened, corroborate her, but not one has done that. In fact, what did happen is Nancy Mace's former communications director, who used to work for Nancy Mace in Congress, put out this statement. I'll read it to you on Twitter. This is the same woman who told staff, myself included, during January 6th, that she wanted to get punched in the face by a rioter so she could get on TV. She's full of shit, and her prop of a sling is a pathetic ploy for attention. That's Nancy Mace's own former communications director.
Wow.
So then Nancy Mace went after me again today, and she said that I should face the women in my life because I'm making light of this issue. You know, if you take like her word, like her best case scenario, what she told the cops is that he shook her hand and wouldn't let go right away. Like he just held on to her hand. That's her version. Now, you know, the other witnesses, there's like multiple witnesses who dispute that. They said it was a normal handshake. And, you know, the other, so that's number one. So to come in an arm sling, and this is especially like a couple days after Trump was like arm wrestling Macron, you know, and was yanking his hand around, you know, to try and show what a tough guy he was. But, you know, but now the handshakes are supposed to be like an assault. So that was number one, you know, and then the other thing that really tips it off is this, like Mace, you know, got her whole news cycle thing going with the trans bathroom thing. And then, you know, that dies down and she hadn't gotten any media attention for like 3 days in a row. And for her, that's like a crack addict going through withdrawals, you know, who's like or a meth addict who's been out for 3 days and the dealer drives by, you know, and it's like you start chasing up. I mean, that she obviously was like looking for something to get herself back on TV. And of course, what is she doing today? I think though, even like Fox and Newsmax is getting tired of her because even they're not giving her as many interviews on this nonsense. But she was on like Benny Johnson's podcast telling her story today, who was the Russian paid asset.
Right. You know, I called her the Jussie Smollett 2.0 female version. Yeah, we both
called her Jussie Mace.
Yeah, that's really and what's really tragic about this, Ron, just like Jussie Smollett, is that the real victims, you know, whether it be the real victim of a sexual assault or the real victim of an attack that has political ramifications, is it takes away from the real victims. Now, my question is this. I believe she made this up. You believe she made this up. There was no physical assault. It's a bunch of nonsense. I think she should be held to account, but what can be done? I mean, if you file a fake police report,
that's a crime.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I think it's a serious crime. So, Ron, what can be done about this? You have witnesses. Elliot Hinkle is one of them. I think there was another trans woman that was a witness as well that said this didn't happen. It was just a regular handshake. As you eloquently pointed out, there's nobody on her staff that's taking her side on this. What can be done about this, Ron?
Yeah, that can. I mean, I was a criminal lawyer for 29 years and handled many cases where people were charged with making a false police report. And how this usually happens is, you know, look, you have to look at it from the cops' perspective. They weren't there. They didn't see it, right? No police saw it. So in that situation, an officer comes up and you have one person says this happened, the other. Now the officer has a choice. They can decide, you know, there's just not enough here. That's number one. Number two, they can just write it up and send it to the prosecutor and say, this is what these people said. This is what you decide if there should be an arrest. You decide if you're going to charge somebody, but we're not sure, so we're not going to make an arrest. But in this particular case, since it involved a member of Congress, they decided to make an arrest. And they decided to make an arrest based solely on her word. And here's the other part too. We always look in these kind of cases for when was the outcry? We call it the outcry. When was the report made? In other words, like when this happened, did she scream and get on the phone and call 911 and call the cops and say, don't you go anywhere? Oh, no. No. Everybody left. She left. Her staff left. Everybody left. And then like 20 minutes later, she calls the cops. So clearly this was like a situation where she maybe thought about it and was like, oh, because what happened is the trans person that he wasn't even a trans person. Okay. The other person was the witness, but this is just a guy. He's not trans. The person who was arrested. And what he says is like, what I believe happened is he shook her hand and he said, you know, you really need to, you know, respect trans people's rights. He made that statement. And I believe that she walked away from there and she got pissed and she got aggravated that this guy would come up to her and say that to her.
Right.
So she decided to create this assault story, which is backed up by nobody, to teach this guy a lesson. how dare you come up to me and say this to me, a member of Congress? I'm going to show you. And she even tweeted that. Like, she tweeted F around and find out. That's what she tweeted. So what happens with these filing false police reports is they're always after the fact. Once the cops sort of dig into it, prosecutors start digging into it, and they make the determination that this is BS and they think it's, that's when they will then charge the alleged victim with making a false report. So it always happens a few weeks later. But in this particular case, considering she's a member of Congress, it's going to be a long shot.
Do you think James McIntyre will have the ability and have an opportunity to file a defamation suit against her? I mean, his name is in the news now.
Yeah. In fact, I think McIntyre would have a very good case, but, members of Congress have immunity. And I would think that for things that they say in Congress, they don't have immunity for everything. They don't have immunity for crimes they commit. So I wouldn't think that they would have immunity for this under the speech and debate clause. But considering it was at sort of a congressional event, maybe she could make that argument.
Yeah, I hope he does. I just think she is a disgrace of a human being. And I'm glad you've been covering this as strong as you have. I want to get your take on Donald Trump kind of downplaying the fact that he might not be able to lower the price of eggs. You talked a little bit about this on social media today. It's interesting. He makes all these promises, which you've covered extensively, and now he kind of backpedals on it. What are your thoughts on this before he even gets into office? Yeah,
he's backpedaling on a lot. He said he was going to end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours, and now he's saying, well, there's a lot of moving parts, could be very difficult. See, he's already hedging his bets on a lot of things, including this. So the only thing that we can do is sort of catalog all of these things, call him out, show all the broken promises. Of course, he hasn't taken office yet, so you can't do too much yet. But once he takes office and these promises start getting broken, here's what I think he's going to do. I think he's going to keep all the horrible promises and he's going to break all the good ones. Like, all the ones where like, I'm going to, end war. I'm going to cut the budget. I'm going to buy a third. I'm going to balance the budget. All the good ones he's going to break. All the terrible ones, like I'm going to deport everybody and lock everybody up and go after the media. I think he'll keep those promises.
You're probably right. I think that makes a lot of sense. The bad stuff he'll keep, the good stuff, like wanting to actually help us when it comes to the economy or lowering prices. I think prices are going to get jacked up. Ron, I hope you stay on this Nancy Mace stuff. I know you will. You guys are doing a great job. If she's responding to you, you're doing something right.
Oh, yeah.
So please keep it up.
She always responds to me.
Yeah, well, because you hold her to account, and that's why I have so much respect for you and what you guys do at Midas Touch. Please keep up the great work, my friend. I love it. Maybe we'll catch up with you next week. Ron Filipowski, thank you so much for your time. Speaking of liars, the Pete Hegseth drama continues, but Pete Hegseth won't do an interview on CNN. He won't go on MSNBC. He'll go to his safe space, his former employer, which, by the way, I won't be surprised if he starts running back to Fox News. That's right. Pete Hegseth made an appearance on Sean Hannity where he wasn't challenged on any questions, but he was lying last night, a bald-faced lie. Why do I say that? So this is Pete Hegseth just last month on a podcast talking about how he doesn't want women on the battlefield. Have a listen to this.
You don't like women in combat?
No.
Why not?
I love women service members who contribute amazingly because everything about men and women serving together makes the situation more complicated, and complication in combat means casualties are worse.
Yeah, there you go, Pete. Yeah, he loves to cheat on women. We know that. He loves to allegedly assault women. We know that. Oh, no, he didn't do anything wrong. Oh, really? Why'd you pay her all that money? You didn't do anything wrong? Oh, I understand the police didn't charge you. Why'd you pay her off? Why is she in a non-disclosure agreement? Just asking the question. Just curious. This was Pete Hegseth on Sean Hannity yesterday. basically saying the opposite of what he just said last month on that podcast. Have a listen to this.
It means a lot. And I also want an opportunity here to clarify comments that have been misconstrued that I somehow don't support women in the military. Some of our greatest warriors, our best warriors out there are women who serve, raise their right hand to defend this country and love our nation, want to defend that flag, and they do it every single day around the globe. So I'm not.
You're not what? You just said last month you don't think women should be on the battlefield. Then you go on Sean Hannity's show and saying that the media is lying. Those are your words. We're using your words, Pete. Now, in my personal opinion, if you're going to be a leader or number 2 in command when it comes to our nuclear codes, which is exactly what the defense secretary does have, then I want somebody that not only served this country, because there are millions of people then that would be qualified for the job, which we know is not true. I want somebody with a moral compass. Now, I understand a lot of people on the MAGA right don't care about people with morals. They don't care. Hence, we have the incoming president who's a 34-count felon and an adjudicated rapist. So obviously, a lot of these people don't care about morals. They'll claim they do. They'll say they're good Christians, wholesome people. They care about the nuclear family. You care about the nuclear family, but you want a guy to be the defense secretary who cheated on his first wife with a coworker, cheated on his second wife with a Fox News executive, had a baby with her while being married to his second wife. He cheated on his third wife. And they want to talk about the nuclear family? I'm a different man now than I was back then. His own mother called him a woman abuser. Oh, but he's a different man now because he found Jesus. Like it's, you lost your keys and you found your keys again. Oh, look, I found Jesus. Look, there he is. I found him. No, that's not how it works. Because people who use their religion to hide behind their horrific behavior are douches. Yes, Pete Hegseth is a douche at a minimum. He's a horrible guy who's treated women terrible his entire life. Ask his ex-wives if they're not in non-disclosure agreements. You could have asked his own mom. Look at the comments she made about him years ago. Oh, yeah, I know. She appeared on Fox News in that scripted interview. Oh, he's a different man now. She never retracted what she said. She apologized, never retracted it, said, hey, you know what? I was wrong. I lied. She never said that. As he is being transported to that facility for his court appearance, there were members of the paparazzi, of course, that just wanted to get some tape of him getting out of that police car and seeing if they can get any statement from him at all. And I don't know what triggered him other than the fact that he's probably going to spend the rest of his life behind bars, and I'm sure he's losing his mind. But he was heard getting out of the police car as members of the media were trying to get a statement from him. And listen to what he had to say if you can hear it, and then we'll go over it.
And it's completely out of touch, and it's an insult to the intelligence of the American people and the lived experience.
So obviously this is someone who's lost their mind. An insult to the intelligence of the American people is what he was heard saying. And I would imagine, and I'm guessing here, that would have something to do with his opinions on the healthcare system. This is a very strange story, and I say it's strange because this is someone who did not really have much of any criminal record at all. When he was living in Hawaii, he was cited a $100 ticket for being in a park that was a private park. That's all he has in his criminal background. He didn't really have a criminal background at all. He came from a very wealthy family. This is something also strange in that he didn't have to worry about getting proper health care. I understand that he had some back issues and he had gone through a surgery. His roommate said on CNN yesterday that as far as he couldn't even have sex, he told him, because of his back issues. I don't know. But he got all the health care that he needed. He comes from a very, very, very rich, wealthy family, a family that owns a bunch of country clubs. Very wealthy family. His late grandfather, was a real estate mogul. So the family's worth tens of millions of dollars. Actually, probably more than that, probably hundreds of millions of dollars. So his family, and he didn't appear to have any issues in the healthcare industry because they were loaded with money. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't feel for other individuals. I get that. And listen, I don't know all the circumstances, and we're going to learn a little bit more about this Luigi character But here's what it appears to me. It appears to me that he most likely, I don't know this for sure, but I'm giving you my opinions. He most likely worked alone. I don't think that other people were helping him. And I understand he was on a phone a couple minutes before the shooting. Now, he made a lot of mistakes, but he was not a stupid person. This was somebody that's very well educated, right? An engineer, top of his class. So very book smart person. He obviously made a lot of mistakes, one of which was looking exactly like the way you looked in the shots that police put out to the public to find you. I don't know why he was still masked up. It made people think that it was him. But that was his demise. He made a lot of mistakes in the shooting, including leaving notes that were on his person about the healthcare system, which is really strange, among other things. But this is not what I expected. I thought this was a hit for hire. And listen, it still might have been. We're going to learn more information, but it just doesn't appear that way. It seems like he probably was acting alone. And it sounds like somebody that had a mental breakdown. It sounds like somebody that just lost his mind. This was not somebody that was a violent person, according to friends that knew him, including his former roommate. This was not somebody that ever put his hands on anybody. This was not somebody that was ever aggressive, that yelled at people. You look at his social media, there was nothing on there that would suggest that he would commit a violent act. It sounds to me that this is somebody that mentally just lost their mind, just lost it. And sometimes in society that happens. You know, I remember covering the October 1 shooting in Vegas, and those are completely different circumstances, right? But this was somebody who killed, 60 people? And he didn't have a criminal past. He never did anything to anybody. He was never arrested for anything. But all of a sudden, he just lost his mind, and he bought a bunch of guns, and he was planning out attacks and killing a bunch of innocent people for no reason. We still don't know why he did what he did, other than that there was mental illness in his family. We don't know anything about this guy, Luigi, except he came from a very fortunate, wealthy family. Seemed like a pretty normal family. Rich, but normal. And it appears to me that he just lost his mind. But the idea, at least to me, the idea that somehow the left is championing this guy is a lie. And I want to play a cut from a guy on CNN that I think is a complete imbecile. I've talked about Scott Jennings before. I've had people on this show that have gotten into it with Scott Jennings. He's just a pompous prick. And I just don't think he's a good guy. And why do we know who Scott Jennings is? Why is he even a name? Well, because he was an advisor to George W. Bush. Probably advised George W. Bush to go to war in Iraq. How did that go? So he's known for being an advisor to an awful president. George W. Bush was an awful president. Awful, terrible. So CNN, hires this guy to spew his right-wing talking points, and he's so condescending. And they lie. Here is Scott Jennings, literally lying on CNN about the left. Have a listen to this.
Let me just help you understand. If you're on the American left tonight, here's my chart. The good guys today, Daniel Penny. The bad guys, Luigi Mangione. It seems to me.
How do you?
Everybody
what's
on the
the
left,
chart for victims?
I'm just telling you what I see out in the world.
I know. I just want you to finish the chart. Which victim is good and which victim is bad.
What I'm telling you is
that's not on the second page.
People on the left can't seem to tell the difference between the good guys and the bad guys.
People on the left. I'm asking you whether you consider this person.
We had people praising
I want to know whether you think that, as Congressman Crane does, that Daniel.
Okay, so first of all, when Scott Jennings says there are people that are saying Luigi is good, who is Scott Jennings talking about? Can you name me one prominent Democrat that has said nice things about this guy who murdered Brian Thompson? The answer is no. But that's what these right-wing morons do. They take a couple comments on social media and some people on, by the way, not even knowing what political affiliation they're from. There's always going to be people on social media that are going to say stupid things. Like the incoming president of the United States, who calls those who attack police officers on January 6th heroes. He calls them patriots and hostages. But you see, Scott Jennings doesn't want to talk about that. He wants to make incendiary comments about random people on social media. Let me repeat, there's not one prominent Democrat in office today that has said positive things about this murderer who killed this CEO. Not one. And Scott Jennings paints a broad picture because he sees some comments on social media and he assumes these people are lefties that are making positive comments about Luigi. Now, we can still criticize the healthcare system. And it was Shapiro in Pennsylvania yesterday who held a press conference, who said the opposite of what Scott Jennings just said. He said, nobody should ever be praising this guy. He's a murderer. But you see, Scott Jennings is a liar, just like Ted Cruz, Cancun Cruz. Could you find a worse human being, by the way, than Ted Cruz? Just an awful human being, Cancun Teddy, who defends people who attack the looks of his wife and his family, by the way. Don't even get me into that. This is what Ted Cruz said on Twitter. He said, quote, leftism is a mental disease. The suspected murderer, an Ivy League graduate, subscribed to anti-capitalist and climate change causes, according to law enforcement. And the murderer has been widely celebrated by leftists online. Tragic and sick. Keep in mind, this is the same a-hole, Ted Cruz. After Paul Pelosi was bludgeoned almost to death with a hammer, Ted Cruz is the guy that went on social media and endorsed conspiracy theories that this was some sort of gay relationship and that he was let into Paul Pelosi's home. Now, did he ever retract those statements? Did he ever apologize? Of course, the answer is no. Because Ted Cruz is an a-hole and he's an awful human being. Now, there might be people online that have said some stupid things and praised this murderer. He doesn't know if they're leftist or not. He has no idea. There's people on the right that say crazy things every day on there. But Ted Cruz wants to, again, try to score political points in attacking the other side of an aisle. You couldn't find a more phony person than Ted Cruz. And then there's Bridget Gabriel, who I've gotten into it with on social media before, another right-wing buffoon, who said, quote, it's pathetic we need to have this debate. It shows just how far the left has fallen. Daniel Penny is a good guy. Luigi Mangione is a bad guy. Okay, so first of all, this is what they do. Name me one prominent Democrat, just one, that says Luigi Mangione is a good guy. You couldn't find me one. Not one prominent Democrat across the country has said positive things about this guy. So Bridget Gabriel and many of these right-wing buffoons are nothing short of liars. They lie. That's what they do. And I'm not going to sit here and say Daniel Penny is a good guy either. He's sitting there drinking a beer, having a drink with his attorneys. This man's dead. You're the one who decided to put him in a chokehold. You're the one who decided to keep him in a chokehold after he was unconscious. I wouldn't call that a good guy. Now, the jury made their decision. I disagree with it. But I'm telling you, I warned you guys, the Republicans are going to look to Daniel Penny as some sort of hero, and Penny's probably going to run for office and speak at the Republican National Convention. They're going to paint him out to be a hero, just like they did with Kyle Rittenhouse. It's the exact same thing. These Republicans are very predictable. Whenever we have a tragedy, or in this case, a murder, or in this case, a death, they always want to attack Democrats and they always want to blame Democrats. But when it comes to January 6th and all those right-wing white supremacist turds that attacked police officers, they're heroes, they're patriots, they're hostages. So if you don't know who Caitlin Clark is, you might be living under a rock, but that's okay. Some people aren't big sports fans. I understand. Even if you're a casual fan, you should know who she is. So Caitlin Clark, Rookie of the Year, one of the best female basketball players in the world, a lot of hype, well-deserved, coming out of college, and then playing in the WNBA for, I believe, the Indiana Fever. Caitlin Clark got a little roughed up last year. Some hard fouls. I think some players are very jealous of her popularity, and that's unfortunate. However, I've always said this about Caitlin Clark, even though I'm not a huge WNBA person. I've always said this about Clark. She handles things with grace and class. She always seems to say the right things. And yesterday, not an exception to that. So Caitlin Clark made some statements yesterday about black athletes. And she said in an interview with Time, I want to say I've earned every single thing, but as a white person, there is privilege. A lot of those players in the league that have been really good have been black players. This league has kind of been built on them. Now, I have absolutely no problem with that. I think those comments that she made were very classy. appropriate, and she's 150% correct. You look at the NBA and the WNBA, predominantly filled with black athletes. And what is she doing? She's saying there's something called white privilege. I think most people would agree with her. And I think people that don't think we don't have white privilege are usually people that are bigots, that are racist in nature. And then she's just trying to lift black athletes. There's nothing she said that was wrong. There's nothing she said that was woke. Literally nothing. I don't have a problem with anything she said. And again, Caitlin Clark has handled everything, as far as I'm concerned, in her career with nothing but class and dignity. And she's a very bright young woman, and she's going to be a star in the WNBA for her entire career, and she deserves it. So what is she doing? She's lifting black athletes. Boy, what a horrible thing to do. Well, you know what? If you're a Charlie Kirk, you have a problem with it. And what Caitlin Clark is doing is exposing how racist and bigoted in nature some of these people are. Charlie Kirk said, quote, Caitlin Clark is getting very bad advice. The whole country's rejecting wokeism and anti-white ideology. She has a chance to stay neutral and failed miserably. Her handlers saw this as a chance to keep woke alive. Too bad. She's an amazing athlete who totally missed on this one. Now, if you're Charlie Kirk, even if there is racism and bigotry, and even if there is white privilege, even if Charlie Kirk disagrees with that, which I think most people would agree, he just would stay neutral because he never defends black people. If you look at Charlie Kirk, his Twitter page is very similar to Fox News in that every single time you see a black person committing a crime, let's talk about that. But then when black people do great things, Charlie Kirk doesn't want to talk about that. And here you have Caitlin Clark, who's lifting black athletes. That's exactly what she's doing. I think that's a great thing. Now, if you're a bigot or you're a racist, if you're somebody like Charlie Kirk, you're going to think that's a bad thing, right? That's not good. And then there's Megyn Kelly, who's another bigoted moron, who's transphobic, racist, and in my opinion, a talentless right-wing buffoon. She says, quote, look at this. Clark's on the knee, all but apologizing for being white and getting attention. Oh, please pay attention to the black players who are really the ones you want to celebrate. Condescending, fake, transparent, sad. What is fake and what is sad about what Caitlin Clark said? She said the foundation of the WNBA and the players have made the league what it is. She talked about the fact that she does have white privilege, didn't apologize for being white. Didn't apologize at all. So I don't have a problem at all with what Caitlin Clark said, and I don't know why anybody would, unless they're bigoted in nature and they're a racist. But you notice anytime anybody raises black athletes or just defending black people in general, it could be a BLM protest. It could be this situation where a famous white athlete raises lifting black athletes. Why is it always the far right that has a problem with it? I'm just curious. I'm just asking the question. Why is that? Have you ever heard Charlie Kirk defending black people? Have you ever heard somebody like a Megyn Kelly asking, why didn't Donald Trump hire more black people within his administration? Have you ever heard anybody on the far right say we need equal rights and equal pay for African Americans and minorities in this country? No, of course not. That stuff is always coming from the left, and the right will call it woke. DEI hire. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, let me be very clear on this. A DEI hire code word from the far right is just another way of them using the N-word, in my personal opinion. Now, they'll deny until the cows come home, right? They'll deny. But the reality of the situation is, if you have a problem with what Caitlin Clark said, chances are you're probably a MAGA supporter, and chances are you're probably a bigot. You know, and I think about Jordan Neely's family. And I think about all the people that are attacking his family on the far right. White people. What a shocker. Where were they when he needed them? Why was he homeless? But they have no idea what they're talking about. And they have no idea because his family has been open and talked about how he's been in and out of facilities, and they tried to get him help and they tried to push him to get more help, and that their home was always open to him. So the people that are attacking Jordan Neely's family are the same people that have attacked George Floyd's family. By the way, George Floyd's daughter living without a father now. Regardless of who George Floyd was or what he did in his lifetime, George Floyd's daughter will always have money, but she will not have a father. Okay. Jordan Neely was still a son, a brother, an uncle. Jordan Neely did some bad things in his life, and he broke the law. But if you listen to right-wing conservative talk and you listen to right-wing radio, they'll paint Jordan Neely out to be a rapist, a murderer, you name it. Well, Jordan Neely is dead. Now, I'll speak for myself on this one, but I can tell you right now, God forbid, if an immediate member of my family was murdered and put in a suitcase when I was 14 years old, I'd be really screwed up my entire life. That's not something you ever get over. We've all had, for the most part, traumatic things happen to us in our life at one point or another. We all have a story to tell. And that doesn't mean it gives people the right to assault people and to harass people. But Jordan Neely was somebody that was extremely mentally disturbed. He was schizophrenic. He was homeless. And he was very, very troubled. But if you want to come at me with an argument that Daniel Penny is a hero, and you're hearing that from alt-right MAGA morons, then I ask you a very simple question. I'll ask you a few questions. First of all, when everybody was out of the subway, why didn't Jordan Neely let him go? At the time where he was unconscious and people were out of the subway, why didn't he let go of the chokehold? That's question number one. Question number two. At no point after the paramedics had arrived and they tried to resuscitate Jordan Neely, when Daniel Penny, in those moments, was smiling, according to some witnesses and testimony, and even when he went into the precinct and was interviewed, not one time did he ever ask if Jordan Neely was okay. Not one time did he ask, is he alive? He called him a crackhead. Why is that? Why is that? Now, I don't know how you guys feel, but if I had put somebody in a chokehold claiming self-defense, and then an hour or two later I was interviewed, I would say, what's his status? Is he dead? Is he alive? Why didn't Daniel Penny ever ask that question? I think it's a very fair question to ask. Why do some of you out there have such a problem with Caitlin Clark and the statements that she made? Why is it as soon as she tries to lift African Americans, in this case, black athletes that play in the WNBA, why all of a sudden do some of you have a problem with that? Why? Why is it the Charlie Kirks out there? Why is it the Megyn Kellys out there and those on the far right want to attack a white athlete for praising black athletes and lifting black athletes? Why do you have a problem with that? I will open up the phone lines early today before my guest comes in studio, and I will ask you all that question because help me understand it. What did Caitlin Clark say that was so bad? Claiming that there is something called white privilege and that the league and a lot of those players in the league that have been really good have been black players in the WNBA. What is wrong with lifting black athletes up And what is wrong with admitting that there is something called white privilege? Why do some of you have a problem with that? The number to call if you want to be a part of the conversation is 702-221-7283. And again, that number, if you would like to be a part of the conversation, 702-221-7283 is the number to call if you want to be a part of the conversation. And if you're just joining us, besides talking about Caitlin Clark and the statements that she made, we're still talking about the Jordan Neely fallout, of course. And I call it fallout because there's a lot of people that are very, very upset. And if you're worried about or concerned about the latest when it comes to this shooter, the CEO shooter, Luigi Mangione, if you also look at a lot of the statements on the far right, they will lead you to believe that those on the left are all praising this guy Luigi as some sort of hero. That is not the case. If you go on social media, you're always going to find crazies on both sides of the aisle that are going to say very, very stupid things. That's par for the course. That's going to happen all the time. That's par for the course. But I haven't seen or heard one prominent Democrat, not one prominent Democrat that has said, boy, that guy Luigi, what a hero he is, or condoning the cold-blooded murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. I haven't heard one Democrat, not one, that has made any statements even close to that. It's a lie. Quite frankly, it's a blatant lie, and it's just not true.